thousands, in the millions, and we will be. Because it starts right here.
Guilty.
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Dani Abdullah, and I'm joined by my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. So today is a special episode as we are joined by comrade Cecilia Gomez, who will be interviewing Derek Ford. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's kind of brilliant. And so Derek is going to be interviewed about the Shaka documentary, Across Enemy Lines, Shaka A, Shakur, in advance of the worldwide premiere. So this is a project that Derek co-directed with the King Trill. He also narrates it. And the documentary actually just had a local premiere showing in New York at the People's Forum. And you can join us at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, which is located at 1619 Prospect Street here in Indianapolis, Indiana, on Friday at 7:30 to be a part of that worldwide premiere. But before we hear from Derek and Cecilia, Derek is going to break it down in the Naptown Breakdown for us. So what is on deck this week, Derek?
Well, first, I want to talk a little bit about the housing crisis that continues to impact Indianapolis. So, interestingly, in 2018, Mayor Joe Hogsett released a report, and the report is titled Indianapolis Community Plan to End Homelessness 2018 to 2023. Quote, "We believe everyone has the right to be housed and connected to care," end quote. So the interesting thing, of course, is that in 2018, that was the exact year that Answer Indiana, one of the founding members of the Indianapolis Liberation Center, launched the campaign along with other groups and eventually won to defeat the sit-lie ordinance. So I haven't read this plan carefully. It's 25 pages, I should say. And maybe it could have been one page, and the plan would be to make homelessness illegal because that's what sit-lie ordinance would have done. However, to what's happening today, long-term housing projects are at risk of losing $10 million in federal grants in Indianapolis. The continuum of care is transitioning to supportive or transitive housing, not permanent housing. So it's impacting rental assistance most, and we will be releasing a more in-depth analysis on this on our website, The Liberator, at IndyLiberationCenter.org soon. Next, really sad news. On November 22nd, Amanda Jones, who is a 26-year-old mother, a friend, a daughter, was murdered in her apartment while a 2-year daughter was at home with her. Thankfully, the daughter survived, at least physically unharmed, but having lost her loving mother, forever. And Amanda was trying to escape a domestic violence situation. So she repeatedly tried to seek help from the police. And according to family members, Amanda told officers, quote, "You're not going to do something till somebody's dead," end quote. The last call she made to the police was 9 hours before she was murdered in this domestic situation. Now, the police are actually more likely to arrest women who are reporting domestic violence than they are to arrest, the actual perpetrator of domestic violence. There's no exact numbers of the number of women who are incarcerated for defending themselves against abusers, but up to 95% of incarcerated women have been victims of domestic or sexual violence. And some reports are specific enough that about 74% of women incarcerated for murder or manslaughter had experience with intimate partner violence the year before. So in other words, over half of women who are in prison for murder and manslaughter are there for self-defense. And that is just to put the police in perspective. Last week, we gave the Circle City shout out to Nikki Schumpert, The police it just shows you exactly what they do. Criminalize survivors, lock up survivors, and kill our, neighbors for walking down the street. And actually, Adam Sykes was protecting a woman who was being harassed. So to turn to some positive news, the Indianapolis Liberation Center is having its grand opening this Friday. Doors open at 5 p.m. Things get started at 6. We are really excited for this new chapter for the PSL and for all the groups that call the Indianapolis Liberation Center home. And we are excited to invite the entire community to this grand opening. It's our very first storefront, and we've wanted one since before we even wanted a liberation center. When a handful of activists with Answer Indiana, PSL Indianapolis, and Indy 10 Black Lives Matter started the first iteration of this project in January 2021, the center was basically like little more than a glorified closet. And it was in the A&P building, actually across the corner on State Ave. No windows, but we were able to host public meetings and, to begin building and having discussions without, and collaborating without external distractions. And we were there for a long time. And we finally liberated ourselves from that Liberation Center. In August 2023, Arte Mexicano in Indiana joined the center. And shortly after, we made the leap to our previous location that many of you have visited, 1800 North Meridian Street. We didn't have any money at the time, at least not enough to pay more than like the first 2 months' rent. But we did have a steadfast belief that the community needed a collaborative and independent organizing space, and that, like all of our volunteers, they would support it. We were amazed at how quickly we grew and how wide our programming expanded. So, our last space allowed the center to bring more partner organizations into the space and create it into a real hub for the community to hold transformative events, book readings with the Indiana Black Librarians Network, connected children and families to authors, librarians, and wonderful children's literature. The Fonseca Du Bois Gallery powered by Arte Mexicano in Indiana, brought in works by dozens of local artists of oppressed identities each month. That will continue to happen here. And so, that's when the center really came into its own, I think, Dani. You've been with us, from the very first center on. Our last space was, really catapulted. And of course, we opened it, our grand opening was 2 days before the Palestinian uprising.
Yes, it was, which was wild. Every time I think about that, that was wild.
Yeah. So I'll just wrap up here and say that we are really excited to invite every single one of you to the, opening of really a celebration, right, of the next bold leap that we're making. The right wants us to be afraid. They want us to cower in fear. And we're doing the exact opposite because, the way that they win is they get you to back down. Instead, we're taking the opposite step and taking another leap because it's everyday people like us who not only make history, but are on the right side of history. And so we invite you to the celebration of what we've built and what we will continue building together.
Absolutely. When talking about the continued housing crisis, and Amanda Jones, right? I think that it is very easy to hear those stories. I think the idea that in 2018 they were like, oh, we're going to get rid of homelessness, and the sit-lie ordinance was happening is insane, right? That is actual insanity that you're like, we're going to get rid of homelessness, and I think you hit the nail on the head to say by criminalizing it, right? By putting homeless people in prison. That's how they want to get rid of homelessness, is to criminalize people who are already down on, I don't even want to say down on their luck, because it's more than just luck, right? It is systemic. I have met homeless people who have 2 jobs, right? It's not due to laziness, right? The only difference between myself and somebody who is living on the streets right now is a couple paychecks, right? Yep. I miss my rent one really one time. Like that's probably it. You know, I can always, of course, like maybe call like a comrade, my mom, you know, whatever. But like that's not sustainable. And like my comrades also have bills. My mother also has bills, right? And thinking about Amanda Jones and just like I've worked with women in similar situations as Amanda. I've worked with women who met a very similar ending as Amanda as well. And I'm not surprised to hear she called the police over and over again. I'm not surprised to hear she had a protection order, that she called to say he violated the protection order, that, you know, like she did everything she's quote unquote supposed to do. Yep. And she's still not here, right? Like there is still a child who does not have a mother. And like hearing things like that and hearing stories like that, I think can drive you insane, you know, a little bit, which is, you know, kind of the point, yeah. I think, you know, so that we kind of just give up and we don't keep fighting. And I'm so grateful for the Liberation Center. I'm so grateful for my comrades, and not just my comrades in PSL, my comrades in Answer. I'm so grateful for Circle City Sangha. I'm so grateful for Arte Mexicano. Like when the first exhibition we had at Arte Mexicano, I was like, yeah, okay, I absolutely understand like how art can be revolutionary. You know, like it's to meet these artists and hear like why they made whatever, you know, piece of art they did and like how they embed like social justice in their art. You know, I'm grateful to the center, and especially when we hear things like about the housing crisis, $10 million, like that's right. Like, you know, you can't pretend, like people are not dumb. You can't pretend that you care about people and then you also like take away $10 million. You also have defunded DPW. And so I don't know how many cars I saw in ditches like today and yesterday, you know, like Hogshead does not care about the people, right? Braun does not care about the people. Obviously Trump does not care about the people. But like coming to the Indie Liberation Center, I'm like, these are the people who care about the people, right? Mm-hmm. Like we care about each other and we help take care of each other. What we could do with $10 million? What? Oh my God! Yeah, $10 million. First off, we need an accountant. Your dad's an accountant, I think. So
retire, but yeah, we can. I'm sure we could come out of retirement to be our accountant.
Yeah,
and we would pay him. Like
absolutely,
the wage of an average worker.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, we would. Yes, we would. But yeah, $10 million, like, and
they can't do anything. They're upset about that. What's the budget? You know, I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. Yep. And they can't end homelessness. Like, it's not incompetence. Clearly, it's clearly like homelessness, systematic. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
Who was it last week? You were talking about Bezos. Who,
right. He makes like as much in one makes, you know, quote unquote, as much in 1 hour as I think like I make in 22 years. Yeah. Something like that.
Like, sir, you could end homelessness like by yourself, right? Yeah. Like right in an hour, you could feed the people of Indianapolis. Right? Yeah.
There's no need for any of this.
Absolutely.
And that's why, and it's why it's been beautiful to be a part of the Liberation Center, because like it is where we care about the people, but also as you were telling those stories back, you know, I got to thinking like, well, that's what we do. Like, you know, we're fighting really to end homelessness. We're fighting really to end domestic violence and sexism and misogyny and patriarchy. Mm-hmm. We're fighting really for the rights of women to, you know, have control over their own bodies. Mm-hmm. We are fighting, and we consistently do that, and we need that infrastructure in place to do it continuously, you know? Yeah. Which is why I think that as we move, you know, everything is coming with us, like all of our knowledge, all of our, you know, collective experience and strength, and it's just going to expand more and more. And I hope that everybody comes out on Friday and just, whether you've never, you know, been to any center before, come, because there's a place for you. You have something to offer. I guarantee it. You know, you have knowledge to contribute, experience to contribute, and that's how we roll here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As a collective.
Yeah. No, I love it. Brilliant. All right, and that is it for the Naptown Breakdown. We will be right back with Cecilia and Derek. And welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. So we are joined here with Comrade Cecilia Gomez, and Cecilia will be interviewing Derek Ford, who, if you've made it this far in the episode, you should know who Derek Ford is. But Derek is the co-director of the Shaka documentary, as well as the narrator for the documentary as well. And so super grateful that Cecilia is here to interview him. If you want to say hello, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, comrade. I'm so happy to be back, and I'm ready to get into Behind Enemy Lines.
Okay, and I'll give it over to Derek.
All right, everyone. My name is Cecilia, and I'm here with the co-director of Behind Enemy Lines, Derek Ford. Thank you, Derek, for talking with me about the documentary. One thing I was really excited to see as I saw you making the process of was how many partners you incorporated into, not just people from the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, but members of the community who are rooting for Shaka and standing beside him as he fights for freedom. I've heard it said before that Shaka Shakur is one of the most impactful political prisoners of our time. And so can you talk a little bit about what makes this documentary timely?
Yeah, I mean, first, I think that that's a astute description of Shaka, and something that I didn't really recognize at first, But I think that really, in terms of not only his ability to analyze the current situation from behind walls, but also to, mobilize, across enemy lines, right? Like across those bars, is one of the things that makes him very impactful. And this documentary, it's actually the second documentary about Shaka. So there's a previous one called Human Rights Watch that the other co-director did, New King Trill, or Jack Huertas, or Comrade Jack. And it's an excellent documentary. The first one he did, and it's more about his personal life. And so over the last year and a half, just talking to Shaka, he was interested in something that would get more into his politics, his political development, the conditions that gave rise to it. Because unlike when we typically think of political prisoners, we think about people who are arrested because of their political activity. Mm-hmm. But in Shaka's case, that wasn't how the story started. He became a political prisoner as a result of his organizing inside of prisons. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think hearing that you're getting into this political, right? Like what makes him a revolutionary figure? I'm someone that we should be not only listening to, but advocating to free. Mm-hmm. And I think that ties into the book, right? That's coming out soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one thing I'll say too is that in terms of tying other people into this is that a lot of it happened by happenstance. Like one of the first people that you meet, Duncan Bridgeforth, was a comrade of Shaka's, actually his mentor, his very first mentor, when Shaka was incarcerated, at the age of 16. He was, still a child, but convicted and as an adult. And, the way that how we got connected with Duncan is that we were putting up flyers for an event with Shaka, and he pulled his car over and he was like, "Hey, what's that about?" And we gave him a flyer, and he was like, "Shaka, all right, And it turns out he's one of the prisoners who gave him his name, his new African name, his new African identity, and so it's like there was that kind of happenstance that happened, as well as just the fact that there's a range of people from across Indianapolis, across the city, across political trends that are in it, speaks to really the reach that he has, even from, solitary confinement, because he's, spent 13 years total, I think, in solitary confinement so far.
Yeah, and he does have there are two chapters, right, for the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign?
Yeah, so we have a national chapter, and then Indiana and Virginia, and then there's we're forming a Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland chapter now.
Right on.
Yeah, and hopefully after the documentary, the goal is to have several, because I think last time I checked, the documentary, the worldwide premiere will be shown in Greece, Athens, Greece. We just got the Chinese subtitles in, so hopefully in Beijing, and then Texas, Illinois, Milwaukee, Virginia, New York City, several places. Yeah.
Right on. I'm glad that you mentioned the goal, like the goal to grow, not only grow the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, but at the end, spoiler of the documentary, you see all of Shaka's like accolades and accomplishments while he's been imprisoned. What's stopping him from coming home?
The state. And it's because yes, you're right. And if you go to shakashakur.org, we have what we call the wall of accomplishments, right? And the pictures of him in his latest certificate, and he always sends me the latest certificates he gets to, photocopy, put up there and store. And during his time, like he's taken advantage of every single opportunity while he's been incarcerated, even in solitary confinement. Like he fought to get access to training programs. So he has like a paralegal degree from a certified university, right? He has a ServSafe degree about, the correct handling of food. He has certificates that allow him to handle biohazardous waste materials. He has like the 7 habits of positive thinking. He has taught interactive journaling courses, not only, taken them, but actually taught them. Even Bible study courses, like even, he's never done meth or anything, but he's taken those courses and gotten certified in that. So it's like every single thing this man could do. So if you believe that prisons are for rehabilitation, then there's like no better example than Shaka Shakur.
Right.
But they still won't let him out. And there's no criteria because, he's, as you'll find out in the documentary, why he's in Virginia right now, even though he was not convicted of a federal crime. And there's absolutely no criteria for him to return home. Like, so there's nothing he can do that would make the state return him to his, so he could be near his family and supporters. And that's, I think, intentional because they don't want them, but they don't want him there. But everywhere he goes, he makes new family and, new community.
One of my friends actually went to the release of the Shaka documentary over at the People's Forum. And I talked with her after because I had asked her to go to see the documentary with all the comrades at the Indianapolis Liberation Center. And she pulled this quote that I'm bringing back to you that you said, which is kind of funny. But some of the most revolutionary literature comes from prisons. They start in prisons. Can you talk a little bit about that, like why that is and what we can maybe expect from Shaka's book coming out shortly after the documentary?
Yeah, so I think I said that because in the context of the United States anyways, I think it's of course different, obviously it's different worldwide, but basically after the overthrow and collapse of the Soviet Union and the era of global counter-revolution that set in the early 1980s, in the United States, Marxism was really discredited. And the only sort of reputation they could hold on to was as an academic theory that was like fun to play with or like, think about or just critique or, analyze like Shakespeare through, which is not to say that, we can't have fun with things, right? But it wasn't a tool for revolution. And that is like not a coincidence because previously when it was a tool for revolution, all the people who were using it as tools for revolution and who won, right, they were all subjected worldwide to like U.S. intervention because without the Soviet Union there as a counterweight to U.S. imperialism, they were able to overthrow the German Democratic Republic, all the Eastern Bloc socialist states, the Soviet Union, of course. They tried to do it in Tiananmen Square with China and luckily did not succeed. And in the United States, those who were using Marxism, and Marxism is, communism, right? Marx didn't claim to invent communism. For most of human history, we've basically been communists, right? So when we say it's not like this man Marx, right? It's just that he was able to, he was somebody who was able to synthesize it, right? And write about it and in such a way that it still holds true today. And, Shaka is a socialist, a revolutionary internationalist socialist. But of course, there have been great developments since Marx's time, and especially with Lenin. And so one of the really like points of unity that immediately attracted us together, and I think helped him let his guard down was our position on the Black nation in the U.S. You know, I remember like the first time talking about the Black nation, he was like, "Hey, comrade, you got to get hip to the lingo. You know, it's the new African nation." And I was, you know, and I explained, I was like, "Yeah, I think that we're with you. We just use Black nation because we capitalize Black because it's a nation, a national identity, and Black people, you know, in the U.S. constitute a nation." Contiguous territory, common culture, economy, et cetera. And they have the right to independence, autonomy, up to and including the right of, you know, cessation. And I was like, most people just aren't familiar with that new African term. And in fact, you know, it wasn't until talking to Kweli Shakur, it's a brilliant New African historian, who was like, you know, a lot of people think when we say New African that we're like better than, like we're the new Africans, you know, like they're the old Africans. And he was like, but it's not like that at all. Just so, you know, because it's a term that's on the left, right? And amongst the progressive movement, we, you know, I was like, we're just speaking to people who they have no idea what that means, you know? And he was like, okay, you know? And so now he writes about New African / Black people, right? Which shows like his humility and the fact he's always like willing to be challenged. And I remember the first time he asked me what I thought about something he wrote, and I was like, what do you care? Like, what, like, what can I possibly contribute to this? But he was really genuine, you know? And I wish I probably had something more insightful to say about it. But yeah, the book, you know, I really wanted, because he's never written a book, and I really wanted like his writings to be out there in a form that was accessible. And so we started working on it probably about around the same time as the documentary, honestly. And we, you know, he's a collaborative person, so we just work very closely together, and it's divided into like the personal section, you know, and where he talks about his autobiography, but also like how writing, you know, what writing does for him in prison. Talks about misogyny on a very, you know, not very deep way, you know. And then there's the New African sort of theoretical section, a section on the prison industrial complex, and 2 other sections. And so that book launch will be at the People's Forum. It'll be live streamed December 13th at 6:30. So I definitely want people to like check that out and get the book. You can get the book there. 1804 Books is putting it out. So you can get 1804 Books as well as at the Liberation Center store. And I think that it's, you know, to return to the beginning of your question, if I can, right? Because like, how did it get there in prisons? Well, all the leaders were arrested, or they were driven into exile, you know? And so really one of the places that the Black revolutionary tradition was preserved was in prisons, you know, George Jackson's writings, you know, and how those carried on. And in fact, you know, I've even met people who like in early 2000s, you know, the revolutionaries were the ones who taught them, but now the movement in prisons is at such a lull. It's, you know, it's quite suppressing. And so I think that this really marks a new phase, not just in like getting Shaka's name out there so that, you know, and getting him free, but really like reigniting a new stage in the prison movement in the U.S. because it's just nothing like it was compared to the 80s or 90s, you know, let alone, of course, the 70s.
Thank you. Something as you were talking, I was thinking about the act of making a book. I think maybe you downplayed it, like talking with Shaka, because Shaka loses communication with the outside pretty often in prison. And it reminds me a lot of the Trinity of Fundamentals, which is another work from a political prisoner in Palestine, also produced by 1804 Books. Can you talk a little bit about this, maybe the struggles or what it was like to be collaborating with Shaka when he's like going on lockdown or losing communication?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting actually too, is like when we were first talking about when we were pitching the idea to 1804 Books, they were like, well, we just released Trinity of Fundamentals, which is like our first kind of foray into the political prisoner, you know, like arena. So, you know, this could be kind of a good follow-up. There was definitely times when it was hard, and I had to basically be like, you know what, like Shaka knows me and he trusts me and I trust him, And I'm not going to put anything out there that he's going to disagree with, because there are many decisions that have to be made, because he's writing on like a tablet. And sometimes at one point in time, the tablet, if he didn't finish it in time, it would erase. He had to send the email, and then it would be saved. And that wasn't happening before, And so he writes, in shorthand, of course. And so I have to extrapolate that, and then, talk about what shorthand is intentional, right? Sometimes, and not all shorthand is the same, right? Not all spelling is the same. Sometimes women is with the Y, sometimes it's with an E. Sometimes, United Nations might be capitalized with periods in between. Sometimes it might not be. And of course, there is the question of like the KKK, like America, right? Or KKK cops. We reach through dialogue, basically, like, because the K in Africa, it's spelled with the K because that's the way it was translated from Swahili. And we keep America with one K. And he was kind of like surprised. I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if we're going for like a more mainstream audience. I think people might just be like, it might be a lot for them, like almost like reading a foreign language. And he was like, damn, all right, yeah, but okay. And he was with it. So there were times like that where I just kind of like trust my gut. And he hasn't seen the book, like he hasn't been able to see it. And actually, he's on lockdown right now. And as we speak, I got a text message today that he was on a hunger strike to see a lawyer and get his possessions. His wife Akili has called to do several wellness checks, and has heard he's fine, but hasn't been able to talk to him. So we hopefully will hear back from a lawyer tomorrow. But he's currently on a hunger strike to talk to a lawyer to access the outside world. So, but it's just like I wouldn't have done it, without. And sometimes you get to the point where I'd ask him, he'd be like, wouldn't even respond. Like, okay, you're like I'm almost like a little kid. Like, is this okay? Asked for his approval, and he's like, okay, we're we're with it, we're on the level,
right?
Like, so, but yeah, it was brilliant. He's a mentor, of mine, and he's very. And one of the things that he mentors me in is humility.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One thing that I was curious to know is what you think is the catalyst or the impetus to bringing Shaka home.
So, like, when we first started a group called Free Shaka Shakur in late 2023, it was like myself, and then Jock, and then Seth Donnelly, who's been working with him, Shaka, for like decades, and of course Akilia's wife, the main people. But of course, he's has many other supporters and friends along the way, and they continuously move him around. Fortunately, he was in the state of Indiana until 2018, but even then he's constantly being moved around, and his possessions taken, and etc. And one of the reasons why I think right now he's under such severe attack is because they know that there's momentum growing around his case, because he's somebody who, it is, I hate to say it, but like from what I've been to jail for a period of time, not for like a protest or something, but like I've never been to prison, right? But, people have told me that, sometimes like going to prison, it's like, converting to Islam or converting to the new African traditions, just something you do, But Shaka has like never backed down, and has even like, disciplined guards for refusing to not be racist to him, And so he's that kind of person. He's also the exact kind of person who you want living next door to you, because he's not afraid to call people out. He's not afraid to admit when he's wrong, right? So I think it's going to take, one, getting his name out there, because if nobody knows about him, what are you going to do, And the reason we wanted to make the documentary, and the one of the balances we had to strike, and I'm curious to see if we were successful or not, is like, basically I was like, look, I want my grandma, who's like, a nice person, goes to church, liberal, and believes in like justice and fairness. Like, I want her to watch this, and maybe she doesn't know all the ins and outs of the new African independence tradition, right? But like she wants you free at the end, you know? And she's also has some idea of what you mean by colonialism and neocolonialism. So we're really trying to reach that audience, like humanize him because he's a human, while introducing the politics. And so I really hope that we were able to strike that balance, because I think the more people that we get involved, like the issues that he's been having to deal with, getting medical treatment, right? We're gonna get, like, we should have healthcare workers and doctors signing on to statements that are saying, you know, like, look at this, the medical neglect. You're trying to kill him by medical neglect. Ultimately, it's gonna take, like the worldwide premiere that's taking place. We have, I think, like 12 places that have registered anyways. So we'll be watching all at the same time, which means that the guards know, the wardens know that we'll all be there watching at the same time, which means that we'll all be watching them too. So they need to be put on notice. And ultimately, like, I think that having his work out here for us to access and having more points of connection, if not directly to Shaka, then to the campaign, is what's going to really keep the momentum going. Because, I mean, he's told me that he hasn't had this much momentum and been so hopeful in some time, because there hasn't been that stable base, you know. And actually, the Liberation Center is like which is where the national headquarters is that base, which is why it's so important that, like, for us to keep it here, because, you know, they can move Shaka, but they can't move the Liberation Center, right? I mean, we lose it, right? And that would be very bad, but we keep it. We keep that memory. We keep those writings, you know, we keep it going. The torch keeps going. And so I think that ultimately, like, it is going to take people doing minor things like calling and emailing and, you know, telling people, sharing the story, sharing the documentary. It's 40 minutes long. You know, I was, like, really insistent to not be too long so you can watch it. And, you know, I don't know. I have a hard time watching long movies, but, you know, not everybody has to read the book. But I think that, like, everybody should be thinking about Shaka when they're organizing, because any political movement that, like, doesn't think about their comrades behind bars isn't worth, like, anything, you know, because what political movement that wins or even makes any gains doesn't have comrades behind bars, and let alone leading comrades behind bars. And so I think that we have to really, those of us on the outside, has to really work to rebuild that inside-outside movement connection, because that's the function of prisons, is to separate, you know, the most explosive historically populations, those most prone to uprisings and rebellions, from the rest of us. And so we got to break that down. And I think the more we do that through every single way possible, the quicker we can get them home. And if freedom isn't our horizon, then, like, what are we doing? You know, I'm not in the campaign to get him better treatment. I'm in the campaign to free him, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, he just turned 59. I'm like, in August, I'm like, all right, let's get him 60th birthday at home. I mean, you know, and it's not just a saying, like, let's do it. We can do it. We can do it.
We definitely can. Thank you, comrade. I appreciate you talking with me about Behind Enemy Lines, which will be displayed at the Indy Liberation Center on Thursday, this upcoming Thursday at 6 p.m. at 1619 Prospect Street.
Thanks, Ceci.
Is that we responded. Where there is repression, there will be resistance.
And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. We hope that you come to the center both Thursday as well as Friday. Thursday for the worldwide premiere of the Shaka Shakur documentary, and Friday for the grand opening of the new Liberation Center. At the top of the show, we said that we had always wanted a storefront, and one of the reasons is that we had always wanted a store. And our last place had a store, but it was mostly, you know, online. Now we have a real physical store that you can walk into, you can browse. We have a very diverse selection of radical literature, It started out mostly about education, radical education, but it's expanded. We have a lot on Black liberation, national liberation struggles worldwide, gender and sexuality. We have children's books and literature, a range of merchandise as well. We have a lot of posters. We actually just got several new poster collections including Women Resist and LGBTQ Liberation, as well as a Fight Deportation and an Answer Coalition poster series. They're 11 by 17s on glossy paper, full color. They come in cardboard backing and a vinyl sleeve, so durable. 1 for $15, I think, 2 for $25, and 3 for $30. So you really can't beat that. So be sure to check out the beautiful artwork that our comrades made, and take the Liberation Center home with you when you leave.
That's so cute. I love that. Take the Liberation Center home with you.
Yes, take a piece of the Liberation Center home with you. There's enough for all of us, right? So there's enough liberation to go around. So, Dani, who gets a Circle City shout out this week?
So today's Circle City shout out goes out to Devin Rush from Live Free Indiana. So Live Free Indiana is the home to the Black Church Coalition, Validus Movement, and Indie Action Coalition. So I met Devin during his initiation into the Black Liberation Party, and at the time he was working for Mental Health of America, and he was putting in work around the clock to make it possible for incarcerated parents to spend time with their children who were in child services, which I at the time was also, I had just got out of being contracted with DCS, and so like he and I were trying to work on, okay, how can this happen? And I was trying to connect him to people. And so that was how I got to know Devin. He is now with Live Free Indiana, where he continues to show up for the most vulnerable of our community, right? Those who are behind bars, while advocating for a safer community as a whole. And a lot of the work that Devin does is behind the scenes. It's laborious, and it's not something that everyone would be willing to do. He does a lot of, unsexy work that, in the grand scheme of things, can be overlooked by people due to its unglamorousness, because it's grunt work and it's behind the scenes. A lot of people want to be in the spotlight, and that's not to say that Devin doesn't get the spotlight sometimes, but a lot of the work that goes into community advocacy and being, an activist, is a lot of it is behind the scenes, and that's what Devin is doing. But like, so much of this essential work would not have been accomplished if it was not for Devin. If it was not for Devin, boots on the ground, putting in that work. And Devin Rush is one of the unsung heroes of Indianapolis. So shout out to Devin.
Shout out to Devin. Yeah, he's very mild-mannered, but very bold thinker, sharp thinker. And actually, I was just on the phone with him the other day because he was trying to help out somebody who had a family member incarcerated in solitary confinement in Pendleton Prison. So actually, there should be an action alert up on our website for that. Okay. I didn't meet with him, but another comrade did. And yeah, people think that like the protest is when you give the speech, that is it. But that's like the least important thing when you're organizing an action. I mean, it's not that it's least important, but like without getting the, building the stage, without making the placards, without thinking about what the speeches are going to be about, I mean, there's so much work that goes into that. And that's, definitely want to uplift Devin. And I mean, I remember the first time I met him, I was just like, how can we work together? Like, I want you in here more, he's just a cool ass dude too. So,
He is.
Yeah. Shout outs to Devin Rush. All right. So before we wrap up here, I want to call your attention to a couple of events we have coming up. Of course, about Thursday and Friday. And then we also have a couple of Hope Packages events coming up. Thursday, December 11th, there's going to be a winter survival kit assembly at the Liberation Center. And then a couple days later, Sunday, December 14th, at 1 p.m., at Lugar Plaza, there will be the distribution of those kits. So, we get people in here to make them, to build community, to talk politics, and then we go out in the streets and we talk politics and build community and expand the community that we have here at the Liberation Center to our homeless neighbors. And I also want to call your attention to two of our regular weekly programs. This Saturday at 9:30, Circle City Sangha will be in action with their weekly mindfulness meetups. And also, this will be the second week in a row that we have Emancipatory Motions. That is Sunday, 6 p.m., and it's with Senna Kirk, who's a brilliant yoga instructor, art teacher, grew up in Turkey, and I was fortunate enough to be here Sunday and fortunate enough not to have to do yoga, although I do really want to. I do really want to. But there was a great turnout, and it was really interesting to watch her like move and just it's kind of like a sense and a total area of knowledge that I'm just like in awe of, because I have no idea what's happening, but I'm just like, I loved watching it. It was amazing. So come by the center Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We got you covered, basically.
Dang. Yeah. Okay.
All right. That's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, and listen for our next episode to drop. Most importantly, come to the center Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We got you covered. The road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your community, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my comrade and co-host,
Dani Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We trying to create a movement. We got a chance to do something in Indiana that brothers like myself been talking about for the last 40 years. When I first became political and we was organized behind the walls in the 80s and 90s, some of the stuff that we doing now with the different programs and the different institutions that we have and things like the Indy Center is things that we used to talk about and dream about doing. And now we doing them. See what I'm saying? We doing it. And we got to keep that momentum going. And it's also generation. So as the next generation come up, you know what I'm saying? It's on y'all to take it to the next level and take it to the next stage.